Good evening, everyone. The public safety meeting is now called to order. We begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kritz people. And also, I would just like to make mention that today is Indigenous Peoples Day. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone would rise and put their hand over their heart. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on our agenda is roll call. May I please get a roll call, Commissioner Secretary?
Commissioner Ramian?
Present.
Commissioner Nickel? Vice Chair Saltzman?
Present.
Chair Hallman?
Present.
Please note that we do have 3 commissioners absent. That'd be Commissioner Blau, Commissioner Freiberg, and Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you, Commissioner Secretary. Item 4 on the agenda is approval of the agenda, is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes for tonight's agenda, October 9th, 2023? Great. Commissioner Secretary, or can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda.
And a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Secretary, may I please get a roll call?
Commissioner Ramian?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Saltzman?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
Great, thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from Monday, September 11th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Move we approve the minutes.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. And can we get another roll call, please?
Commissioner Ramian?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Saltzman?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
Minutes are approved.
Great, thank you. Item 6 is public comments. Before we start with public comments, I have a statement that I'm going to read. I want to inform the community that there has been an increase in attacks at many cities around the states whereby public commenters have been calling into public comment lines at city council meetings and forcing communities to hear vile and hateful, racist, and anti-Semitic public comment messages. I anticipate such comments may come through tonight based on the number of cities that have experienced these attacks. I want to tell the public and staff that while we may sometimes be divided on political issues, West Hollywood is united against hate. Staff has provided us with signs that my colleagues, staff, and public may use to express that we are united against hate. If you hear hateful comments, you may hold up your sign, leave the room, or turn down your volume at home. You are not required to endure speech that offends decency and our core values. Please let the sign show that we are united against hate and that this type of speech does not reflect our values. While these disruptors may take advantage of the opportunity to speak to our community because we currently provide telephonic comments, they will not break our spirit. We are united against hate. And with that, Commissioner Secretary, do we have any public comments in chambers?
I believe we do have one. Joshua, if you want to go ahead and approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hollywood as a portion of my portfolio. I'm excited to be here with you all, and I look forward to developing a strong working relationship moving forward as of tonight. So I just wanted to introduce myself to everyone. Thank you for allowing me the space to be here.
All right, Commission Secretary, any additional public comments in chambers?
We don't have any other comments in public in chambers.
And on Zoom?
We have none on Zoom.
Okay, great, thank you. So moving along, unfinished business, item 7.
Chair and members of the Commission, the Assistant Division Fire Chief Smith is currently en route.
Okay.
And so if we could maybe move on to 7B with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department report, and then when Chief Smith arrives, we'll circle back to them if that's fine with the Commission.
Yes, great, thank you, Director Rivas. So moving to 7B, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department will now provide a report on activity for the month of September 2023. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're used to following the fire department, and he's so lively and personable. I feel not prepared.
You're on.
Okay, for the month of September, West Hollywood Station personnel responded to 1,699 calls for service. 73 of these calls required an emergency response. Deputies made 38 felony arrests and 90 misdemeanor arrests for September. Our response times for the station are currently averaging 3.4 minutes for emergency calls, 9.9 minutes for priority calls, and 29.2 minutes for our routine calls. Our averages are staying pretty consistent from month to month with those times. West Hollywood Station Part 1 crimes are up about 10% from an increase of last year, September 2022. This year we had 182 incidents of Part 1 crimes in the city. A breakdown by district, the West accounted for 50%, which was 91. City Center 18%, which is about 32. And the East End 32%, which was 59 Part 1 crimes. Overall, the Part 1 crimes are being driven by theft, grand theft, petty theft, vehicle burglaries. All of those accounted for 113 out of those 182 incidents. There were 36 pickpocket incidents in September that occurred in the Rainbow District. Pickpocketers continue to target Rainbow District businesses. These criminals take advantage of crowded venues and unaware patrons. Our entertainment policing team continues to speak regularly with business management and staff to keep them aware of the problem and try to be visible to those to deter crime. There were 17 grand theft auto or stolen vehicle incidents in the month of September. Of those 17, 6 involved vehicles with keys being left inside of them. Auto thefts throughout the county and the state have been on the increase. We had 34 vehicle break-ins during the month of September. We would like to remind people to lock their valuables in the trunk of their cars and not leave anything visible. Thieves break into cars and take property within the matter of seconds. They target vehicles in shopping districts and areas known for tourism right now. Traffic-related information, we had 7 DUI arrests in September, 3 of which involved traffic collisions. We had 3 vehicle versus pedestrian collisions, one on September 2nd, where the driver was found to be at fault for not yielding to a pedestrian. September 3rd, we had one. The pedestrian was found to be at fault for walking outside of a crosswalk. And on September 16th, there was another one where the driver was found to be at fault for yielding to the pedestrian. September, we had 4 vehicle versus bicyclists type collisions within the city, none of which involved scooters or electronic bicycles. Some of the notable incidents for September. September 1st, there was a robbery in the 8400 block of Santa Monica Boulevard. Based on our ongoing investigation, it seems that the victims were targeted based on what they were wearing, watches and jewelry that was being worn. Our station detectives are actively investigating with leads to this incident. On September 15th, there was a robbery that occurred at a retail store on the 7100 block of Santa Monica Boulevard. A suspect took items from the store, and when the store staff attempted to stop the suspect produced a handgun. Store staff let the suspect leave. Several days later, the suspect returned to the store to steal again. Store staff recognized him and called the station. Deputies were able to arrive in time and arrest the suspect. EPT deputies, entertainment policing deputies, have made 2 arrests stemming from our new license plate reader cameras in the city. We'll be working on tracking more data associated with those cameras that have been installed, which would include the number of arrests that we made and the number of wanted vehicles traveling throughout the city. For the month of September, our station volunteers donated 250 hours of time. Our community academy is currently in week 6. This past week, our participants were given presentations from our arson explosives canine, Perla, and our narcotics detection unit, canine Rambo. Wednesday, participants will be taking a tour of one of our jail facilities downtown. Upcoming for us, we have October 15th is going to be AIDS Walk LA. There are going to be road closures for the event. Santa Monica Boulevard from Doheny to La Cienega will be impacted that morning into the afternoon. For more information regarding the street closures and parking, please visit the city's event calendar. Information is on their website. The station is currently having weekly meetings with the city and other departments in preparation for Halloween. We're working on a traffic and safety plan that will be implemented the day of. We're anticipating a very large turnout based on the return of this event. Our goal is that everyone who attends has fun and a very safe night. Touching on some of the information or some of the questions from last session, it was asked that our stat information be broken down a little bit more with a breakdown of what some of the information in contained means. Our crime analyst at our station is currently working on a new chart, I guess if you want to call it that breaks down and has a little bit more detailed information as to what crimes are committing and what those definitions of those crimes are. I believe the captain has signed off on what the new format will look like, and starting next month you will receive that new format to see a little bit more breakdown as to what things are. Let's see, what was the other one? Oh, in regards to vandalisms on the East End, we currently don't have any information regarding an uptick in vandalisms, specifically graffiti. That doesn't mean it's not happening. A lot of that can be contributed to what I believe is maybe some graffiti abatement where people are just having it cleaned off prior to or not even reporting it to us.
We weren't able to provide the citations for this month because, as we've discussed in the past, our computer systems are very finicky. And we've had a little bit of issues with the Secretary for Traffic was unable to pull the traffic citations for the month of September. So we'll add that as soon as we can get that computer system up and running. We'll give you those informations, but those are going to be part of the regular reporting. But just we couldn't provide them this time around. Open for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, does anyone have any questions for sheriffs?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sergeant Teran, Lieutenant Lapkin. I was just wondering if you could give us any information about the shooting that occurred last night at the bar called Apartment 200. It's on the East End on Santa Monica Boulevard.
So there was a incident that occurred there. It was the 7700 block of Santa Monica Boulevard at a business there. It was a bar, and there was a shooting that occurred there. The suspect is in custody, was arrested at the scene, and the person that was shot is in stable condition, non-life-threatening injuries.
Just to give you, again, that's under investigation, but it was not a random. He was upset because he was asked to leave the place, return back, and it was against security. So that's all. It wasn't a bystander. It wasn't a patron of the club. You know, unfortunately, it was one of the employees of the club. He was just upset that he was asked to leave.
That was my next question. You anticipated what was the motivation? All right. And the suspect is still in custody.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned also the robbery that occurred at the 7100 block of Santa Monica Boulevard, where the suspect pulled a gun and the second time was arrested. Do you know his status? Is he or she still in custody?
I don't know that one offhand. I can look into it and find out, but I didn't have that information if they are still in custody. Based on the time, let me see, it was on the 15th. It's very possible that that person can be out of custody by now, but I don't know for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Ramian?
Good evening. Thank you for your report, Captain and Lieutenant. I want to just ask one question about the pickpocketers. Excuse me. I understand the pickpocketing situation is not going away. And I'm also learning from several business owners in the neighborhood that these are new faces every time. Just recently, I was informed of one individual who is a senior citizen who is involved in this ring, who is on video camera, approaching individuals and allegedly committing some kind of pickpocketing crime. When these individuals are being detained and released, the cycle is ongoing. It's never going to end. Is there a solution that the sheriff's department or the district attorney has to somehow put this to an end or lower the number of pickpocket incidences that occur here in West Hollywood?
A solution that's kind of a tricky question to answer. There's never a solution for stopping a criminal mind from wanting to do something. They're going to do it regardless whether we want them to or not. It's really going to come down to whether they get punished for it. And as you guys know right now, the punishments and the things that keep people in custody has been severely diminished. So that's why you're seeing quite a bit of a turnaround. You'll see people, we have had repeat offenders here in West Hollywood that get caught for pickpocketing. The level of the crime plus the punishment is just really not there at this point. So people are taking advantage of that, in our opinion.
One thing, in our community academy, I believe it was last week, or was it the week prior when the DA was here, all of these crimes that are, all these pickpocketers are coming from Central America. They're here on visas for 90 days. So they're committing their crime within a 90-day period. They get caught and they go back, and then, the next cycle of people come in. What is it that the community could do? Is it a petition? Is it something that we can do to help prevent this from going on and on and on? Is it that we, it's out of my pay grade, I'm sure it's out of your pay grade, but it's if the visas are the issue for those 90-day visas and people are committing these crimes, they have 90 days, they have nothing to lose, like we were informed. Maybe there's a solution or something we could discuss on how to prevent these visas from being granted.
When it comes to preventing it, the thing that we can do at a local level is just be vigilant. People that are out at the bars and clubs need to be vigilant. The bar staff, business staff, security. We need to just stop at our level to deter them from coming here to West Hollywood to begin with. The other part about them coming in on visas, that's obviously a bigger picture that we're not going to be able to solve at a local level. At this local level, we just need to be vigilant and deter them from coming here. Whether they get arrested every night, and hopefully that stops them, that's something that we can do. But the bigger picture is a little bit above us with organized crime from outside the country.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Saltzman, do you have any questions? Okay. I have a question just for my own clarity. What are the laws in the city regarding pitching tents on the street?
So there are local ordinances here in the city of West Hollywood that doesn't allow camping or setting up a tent in public on private or on public roads or on streets, sidewalks.
So does that include, the reason why I'm asking, because I was a little confused the other day, there was a tent on Detroit up against the emergency evacuation door at Ralph's. And I was told that that individual couldn't be asked to move because it wasn't on the sidewalk. Is that correct?
That's correct. So if it's anything on the inner portion of the sidewalk, it's going to be private property most likely. What you're describing right there, I'm familiar with that area. That is Ralph's property. They would have to have the complaint essentially to have that person asked to leave their property.
But I'm sure that with all the city ordinances, they don't apply to private property, but we can talk to the owners and say, okay, this is not, you cannot allow them to stay, because of the various reasons, because you allow one, then before you know it, you're going to have a whole parking lot full. So we can speak to the owners and we can speak to management to say, okay, because some people do say, oh, they allow me to stay on private property. Yeah, we can't dictate private property, but yet we can dictate when it's visual from the public eye. And
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, is there anything on that? You would be the expert on code enforcement.
Well, I think something to add in addition to that is, the city definitely takes an outreach approach as well. And so, we definitely will be working with our social services partners, right, to get some teams out there to do some outreach to the individual to try to see if we can connect them to services. But as Lieutenant Lapkin and Sergeant Duran had mentioned, we do have ordinances that also address issues related to that on private property. So if there are concerns that are reported to us, then we'll have our code enforcement staff that'll work in conjunction with our sheriff's department partners and try and, again, connect folks to services. And depending on the situation, if we need them to move on, then we certainly will in terms of working with the property owner. There is what's called a letter of agency that folks are capable of filing. It's a little bit tricky and different on commercial property. If folks are open regularly, right, in terms of their hours of operation, there is some limitation in terms of how effective the letter of agency can be. But if it's like an after hours situation, they do have a letter of agency on file that would allow our sheriff's deputies to be able to access the property. But as I mentioned, whether it's our security ambassadors or whether it's our code enforcement staff to kind of view that, there are measures and ways for us to help address those issues.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioners, any additional questions? Yes, Commissioner Ramey.
Just one other question, comment, and maybe this is directed to Director Rivas and our partners at the Sheriff's Department. I want to read a section of a municipal code, an ordinance for West Hollywood. It's section 9.04.030, sitting or lying on public ways. And that is under the chapter 9.04 under general offenses. And the title is sitting or lying on public ways. It says, no person shall sit, lie, or sleep upon any public highway, greenbelt, median, island, alley, sidewalk, crosswalk, other public places, or way open to pedestrian or vehicular travel, or apparent thereto. The provisions of this section do not prohibit a person from sitting upon a public highway, greenbelt, median, island, alley, or sidewalk, crosswalks, or other public place. If they're watching a parade, a disability is involved. So my question is, throughout the city of West Hollywood, we have all these ordinances. There's an ordinance you can't ride your bicycle on the sidewalk. Everyone's riding their bicycle on the sidewalk. I just quoted an ordinance that says you cannot be sitting or lying in public ways, but we have several unhoused people who are obviously violating this municipal code. Why is it that we are not enforcing these municipal codes if they're being posted throughout our city?
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Lieutenant Lapkin, I'll jump
So
in
on
after.
our end, we let's say we get a call service. You call us and you say somebody's blocking a driveway, blocking a street. When we ask them to leave and they leave, they can leave. But if they refuse, that's when we enforce them. That's the same thing with the 602 with the trespassing. If we ask them to leave and they leave, then there's nothing we can do on that. I mean, and that's what the cops team, this EPT team, that's one of the major things that they do. Our partners from Block by Block, you know, we go and talk to our, you know, on-house population when they are sitting on a sidewalk, when they are blocking a driveway. If they leave, then they leave. So we're limited to what specifically we can do. We can't just cite them right then and there because we have to ask them to leave.
And in regards to riding bicycles, I know that's a more difficult problem to enforce because obviously they're riding their bicycle on the sidewalk, they're going right by you. How would that be enforced?
Well, that's a vehicular traffic. That's a vehicle code violation. How do I put this? We have to do enforcements. Like if we have to do specifics for, if we do bike enforcement, then that's what we do. It's a lot of the time we'll tell them, hey, get off the sidewalk, you know, ride it correctly, and they do. That is not a priority on the scale of things that are happening within the city, is to go specifically for bicyclists who are riding on the sidewalk. Is it something that we can address? If we see a problem, we can do an operation and do something that we can address. If there's some specific street that's happening a lot, we can send our traffic units to monitor that. But it's not, and I hate to say it the way it sounds, it's not on the list of priorities of things that are happening within the city.
I have a question in regards to bikes. Are our deputies out riding?
Yes, they do various operations depending on what they have going on, but they've gone out for a couple of hours here and there. They don't do the whole 8-hour shifts because that's not, we don't have a bike patrol team, but the cops team and EPT team, I should say I think most of our cops team is bike patrol certified, but our night teams are not. So we're waiting on the training from the department because with anything else, it's just, we have to wait for an instructor to come and teach. So we're on the waiting list to have a class specifically done for West Hollywood so that not only the teams can go out there and ride bikes, but also the deputies that are on foot beats, we can actually do foot beat / bike patrol. So it's a waiting game to try and get somebody from the department, because it has to be an instructor to come, a bike instructor to come and teach the station. But we are on a waiting list for them to come out here.
Okay, are there any plans? I know you said they aren't up for Halloween. Are there any plans to have deputies on bikes for Halloween?
Probably not, just because of the dense amount of people that are going to be in here. It would probably just be a little unsafe for us to try to be riding around on bicycles. Most of our additional patrols are going to be on foot, along with the deputies that are going to be working the venue. Yeah, so the bicycle's probably not for that night, just because it's just too crowded. It's just not going to be safe for both sides.
Okay, thank you. If we don't have any additional questions, do we have any public?
Yes, we do have one public comment. Kevin Burton, if you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner Secretary.
Good evening, Commissioners, all 4 of you. I'm Kevin Burton. I'm a resident of West Hollywood. I'm the co-founder of the West Hollywood Bicycle Coalition. And I do want to pick up on the previous discussion to clarify for Commissioners and the public West Hollywood's municipal ordinance covering bicycling on sidewalks. Bicycling on sidewalks is allowed everywhere in the city unless there is an adjacent bike lane. And there are bike lanes on parts of 2 streets and on all of Fairfax Avenue. Otherwise, it is legal everywhere in this city. The main reason I wanted to speak this evening is that to comment and to thank Sergeant Duran for reporting collisions between bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles. Had a bicyclist hit every week last month, And since the consequences of a vehicle hitting a bicyclist or a pedestrian are very much higher generally than two vehicles colliding, each one of these incidents is its own tragedy. And we as an organization try to work with the city to reduce the frequency of that. On the reports of collisions, the last couple of meetings, there has been this statement face page turned in, and a lot of the information has been missing. I'm guessing that means something's fallen through the cracks in the reporting, and so I hope that that issue can be addressed for complete recording. Also in the past, we've requested that the reporting of the details of collisions between vehicles and scooters include the same details as provided for bicycle and scooter collisions with vehicles. And that has been improving, thank you. Not quite at the same level as for bikes and pets, but I hope it will in the near future. And I have requested in the past this commission on the behalf of our organization that we receive from the Sheriff's Department at least the number of citations issued against bicyclists riding illegally on sidewalks, which is only these specific areas I mentioned, and also scooters riding illegally on sidewalks, which is everywhere. That's state law, that's not West Hollywood ordinance. And if we could get the numbers over the last couple of years and any details that can be easily extracted from your finicky databases and computers, we would be appreciative. The local sheriff's station has been quite responsive to our requests for this kind of information in the past, and we trust that will continue. Thank you.
Commission Secretary, any additional public questions in chambers?
No, there's no additional comments.
And none online?
No.
All right, great. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
And Chair, we do have our Chief Smith that's here in the chamber, so if we want to hear item 7A now.
Yes, of course, we love hearing from our fire chief.
Well, good evening, and I appreciate the flexibility. Been one of those days. All good, just one of those days. Busy. So for the month of September, just knowing that West Hollywood is still averaging within the city 20 runs a day from Fire Station 7 and Fire Station 8. And within the month of September, we had a total of 8 fires, 445 medical calls, and within that, we had 128 that required advanced life support and 190 that required basic life support. We transported 318 patients. We had 0 hazmat calls. We had 8 hazardous condition calls. We had 7 service calls and 149 good intent calls. And by looking at September, I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary for the call volume and what goes on in West Hollywood. One of those fires that we did have that had some significance and could have potentially escalated was the 1000 block of Hancock, and it was 2-story building and smoke and fire showing from the balcony in the 2nd floor. So had potential, but the quick response by your fire department, quick action with our cooperators with LA City, giving us that robust response, the traffic control measures, and crowd control by our sheriff's department, all makes that efficiency happen. So it's a team effort, and so it had a positive outcome based upon something that could have really extended into that occupancy. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary either with the amount of, which I hate to say it, the routine dumpster fires, trash fires. Those are very common, as you know, in the city. And as your fire department and your sheriff's department that we're patrolling continuously, there's a lot of those that go on and those quick actions are taken. But I always talk about as well that those small fires can lead to other things. And so that's just something that is routine, and we've had numerous conversations about the potential for those smaller outdoor fires to extend into somebody's property or something to happen like that. Had a really on the service calls and hazardous conditions, saw an uptake though on gas leak with liquid propane. So it could be from summertime and outdoor use with barbecues and such, and so those failures happen depending on the serviceability of how you're using liquid propane. So I did notice that that was an uptake for the month of September. And with that, just looking forward towards Halloween, we're going to be in unified command with our sheriff's partners. So we're building our plan on how we're going to have that, what we're going to use is an 8-hour block of fun of Halloween in West Hollywood, and we're gearing up for that to prepare for the event. But once again, carve out, if you will, the event with fire stations in 7 and 8, which is going to maintain the response for their areas, and we'll have resources just dedicated to Halloween. Any questions for me, or if Danny had anything?
I actually have a question before I throw it to my fellow commissioners.
Yes.
There was an actual gas leak on Formosa a few weeks ago. It seemed like a pretty serious one. Can you give us any information on that situation?
I don't know how the rupture happened. I know that it was significant, and one of those measures that we do to stabilize it is called gas company isolate it from the building, but the why behind it, I do not have. I don't know that.
Okay.
But I can find out.
Okay. Thank you. I was just curious. Commissioners, anything for our fire chief? Oh, we're a quiet group tonight.
Yeah.
Commission Secretary, do we have any questions in chambers?
We don't have any questions in chambers or on Zoom.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for rushing to get here. I guess we're good.
Okay, we are good.
All right.
And we'll look forward to talking to you and seeing you. Halloween is the next time.
All right, thank you,
Appreciate it.
sir.
Appreciate the support.
Moving on, item 7C, the block-by-block security ambassadors will now provide a report on activity for the month of September 2023. Good evening.
Good evening. So for September, we did see about 100 more calls for service than we did for August. A majority of those calls still remain consistently with our trends around the unhoused. That unhoused contact showed an increase throughout the city of between 10 and 15% along Santa Monica Boulevard and both parks, as well as the residentials, with both the east and west showing about the same increase in calls for service around the unhoused. Over the last 2 months, one of my major focuses have really been on reinforcing training with our staff around engagement with the unhoused and contacts and having more of a visible presence. And part of that has been involving community outreach support from current resource providers, one of them being the WeHo Mobile Care Unit, who will actually be doing a training for our staff this week as they reinforce their presence in the city. Our ambassadors have become a great resource for them, and so we hope that we rebuild our partnerships and give our ambassadors more resources to reach out to more of the unhoused, since we are out there in numbers. In addition, last meeting we heard your concerns around visibility to the south sides of La Brea near Santa Monica, and Fountain, specifically around the Huxley. I had an opportunity to walk with community members in the area, and we have seen more calls for service from the Huxley. That was one of the recommendations that I did make to some of the community members there, that they call us when they need us. So we did have a few more calls coming from the Huxley that we didn't have previously. In addition, we've had a more consistent presence throughout the day with our routes also touching the Huxley and throughout the day. And so I haven't heard any negative feedback from the community there, so I think we're making a little bit of progress there. Let's see. Some of our challenges still remain around staffing. As part of my work over the last couple of months has been to take a more detailed look into our staff, and we continue to make needed changes to ensure that the City of West Hollywood has the highest quality of service as possible. And the same goes for new hires. Anytime we're interviewing folks for the team, I'm taking a deeper look and vetting a little bit more detailed as far as who we're hiring and who we're bringing on, and really taking our time to make sure that we've got the right candidates for our team. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now is to fill some of those empty staffing areas. But we continue to focus on retraining around overall hospitality, communication, and engagement.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Block by Block? Yeah. Well, I would like to personally thank you. I know they've been having a difficult time, to say the least, at the Huxley. So thank you for taking care of our residents there. Sometimes most people don't realize the Huxley is part of West Hollywood, but I think it's, 291 units in West Hollywood. So they're part of the city, so thank you. Commission Secretary, do we have any comments in chambers for Block by Block?
We have no comments in chambers or on Zoom.
Okay, great. Well, commissioners, if we don't have any additional questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
See you Halloween.
Yes.
New business. Item 8A. The Public Safety Commission will receive a report from the city's engineering division on the traffic speed zone survey that justifies posted speed limits on all West Hollywood streets and allows for radar enforcement of speeds. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Richard Garland. I'm with the engineering division at West Hollywood. I just want to talk briefly about a citywide speed survey that the engineering division is conducting. Cities throughout California are required to conduct a speed survey every 7 years if they want their police department or sheriff's department to be able to use radars for speed enforcement. It's a state law. If the study is not done within 7 years, people who receive speeding tickets can challenge it in court, call it a speed trap, and generally have their citations voided. Since West Hollywood's previous speed survey was conducted in 2016, we are now doing the update so that we will remain within that 7-year period. A consulting firm conducted some speed surveys on 24 of our street segments throughout the city. We only have to survey the arterial and collector streets because local streets automatically have a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and so they don't have to be surveyed. The preliminary results of this study indicate that 22 of the 24 street segments that were surveyed currently have the correct and justifiable speed limit, so it does not have to be changed. And that's based on what's called the 85th percentile speed, which means when they do the surveys, 85% of the drivers are going below that speed and 15 are going above that. And that, again, is the state guideline for conducting these studies. So 22 of our 24 street segments that were surveyed are going to remain the same. 2 street segments need to have the speed limit reduced from their existing speed of 35 miles per hour to a recommended speed limit of 30 miles an hour. And those 2 street segments are Fairfax from the north city limit to the south city, so all of Fairfax that's within West Hollywood, and Fountain Avenue between La Cienega and Fairfax. Those two street segments will be reduced from a speed limit of 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour if this survey is certified by City Council next week. That's all.
I have a question while it's top of mind. You had mentioned a speed reduction on Fountain. Someone got shocked. Between La Cienega and Fairfax, but not Fairfax and La Brea?
Correct. And the results, or that finding is based on this 85th percentile speed. The segment between Fairfax and the east and La Brea, the 85th percentile came in at 39 miles per hour, and you can reduce that down to 35, but you cannot go another 5 miles an hour down to 30. Whereas the speed survey on the west end of Fountain came in at 32 miles per hour, you can round that down to 30, and so that's the justification. Now, within a year or so, hopefully, we're going to be installing bike lanes on Fountain, and that we would then redo the survey, because undoubtedly, when we take some traffic lanes away from Fountain, cars will drive slower. So we will update all of Fountain when that happens.
Okay, it just concerns me because I'm an East Side resident, and when I walk on Fountain, I know when vehicles are traveling from the east, once they cross La Brea, it's almost like the 405, because it goes from single lane traffic to 2-lane, and they're gunning it.
Right.
And I don't think anyone really needs a radar detective to know that they're gunning it and exceeding the speed limit. So that just concerns me.
Yeah, we were generally hoping that the survey would come in lower so that it would be 30 miles per hour throughout Fountain. But there are strict guidelines that are state law that says that whatever the results come in, you have to stay within those guidelines. Now that changes on July 1st of next year. It gives cities more flexibility from that point forward to go down another 5 miles per hour. So we will have some flexibility starting in July.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Saltzman.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I was curious if North Doheny Drive between Santa Monica Boulevard and Sunset was in the survey, and if it was, what the results were.
Okay, let's see. Doheny between what and what?
Between Santa Monica Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard.
Yes, it was surveyed, well, Doheny north and south of Santa Monica Boulevard. The segment you're talking about, the 85th percentile speed came in at 39 miles per hour, so instead of rounding up to 40, they rounded it down to 35, and that's the existing speed limit. So the recommendation is for that to remain at 35.
Thank you. And are you familiar with there's an electronic billboard about halfway between Santa Monica and Sunset, I think the intersection's Elevado, that reports the speed and says, slow down, essentially you're speeding.
Yes.
Is that something that your department's doing, or is that something separate?
It is. We put that up 2 or 3 years ago so that to let drivers know how fast they're driving. It says, speed limit 35, your speed is, and then the radar gun automatically displays their speed, yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Okay, I think we're good, sir. Thank you for your time.
Chair, we do have one comment, public comment on this item.
Oh, apologies. In chambers?
Correct.
Oh, sorry about that. My apologies.
Kevin Burton, if you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Again, Kevin Burton, resident of West Hollywood, and I want to thank staff for doing this survey. And I remember the previous survey from 2016, and adding Fairfax and the western segment of Fountain Avenue to that is an encouraging step. I would request that, as was done in 2016, that the engineering division publish its findings showing for all the surveyed streets, current speed limit, the surveyed 85th percentile speed, and the recommended change, if any, because we were given a full map with all that information. 2016, I think, is very informative for the public.
Certainly.
And I did want to comment on Fountain Avenue too, because I live just off Fountain Avenue. And I am very familiar with the gunning problem. And I would encourage commissioners to follow progress on the project that Mr. Garland mentioned, that is changes coming to Fountain Avenue. The pilot project has been approved by the City Council, whereby it will be reduced from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction, like it is east of Sycamore now for almost all of Fountain Avenue. And it is always observed that speed limits fall when such a change is made. And it's no surprise people drive faster in the single lane, and that will also eliminate the very rapid lane changes associated with the high speeds that are observed on Fountain Avenue. I bicycle Fountain Avenue all the time. Frequently at rush hour, I have a close-up view of that kind of behavior on the part of some motorists. Most of that will go away when it's 1 lane in each direction, like it is going east from La Brea and Sycamore. In addition, the sidewalks will be widened. Currently, they're very sub-ADA standard, and people in wheelchairs cannot get on the sidewalk. Several locations, I've observed this with the delivery robots as well. They just run into the poles, and people in wheelchairs have to go out into the street along Fountain Avenue, back to the next driveway to get back on the sidewalk. And part of this project, a critical part, is that those sidewalks will be widened so that that is no longer a problem. Just widening the sidewalks, which were narrowed about 1963 by the county, will require taking street space, either on-street parking and or travel lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, any additional public comments on this item?
No, we don't have additional comments.
And none on Zoom?
None on Zoom.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, sir, for your time. Moving on, item 8B. The Public Safety Commission will receive a presentation from the city's Human Services Division regarding the West Hollywood Care Team and an update on the Hollywood Interim Housing Project. Good evening, Corey. So nice to see you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Corey Plank. I'm the manager of the city's Human Services Division, and very happy to be bringing you an update on the West Hollywood Care Team. Many of you are already aware the West Hollywood Care Team is our mobile behavioral health crisis response program built to meet the needs of the community members in West Hollywood, both housed and unhoused. We've built the care team to be responsive to the needs of the West Hollywood community members and engage directly with the community in the development of the team to get their priorities for the look, feel, and impact of this new team. We've also heard from many of the city's advisory boards, commissions, including this body, and the City Council to represent the diverse populations and stakeholders in West Hollywood. And thank you for helping with the slides. If we can go to the next slide. So for our community members, crisis behavioral health begins by calling 988. This is the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline that was launched in July 2022. This number has trained crisis counselors available 24/7, and when those counselors determine that an in-person response is needed to a crisis, they will then deploy an LA County Department of Mental Health FIT team, that's a field intervention team, or if the call is from West Hollywood, they will deploy the West Hollywood Care Team, and we'll get into more details of how that dispatch program will work. And the next slide. So after 3 years of development and conversations with the community and looking for kind of the right sizing of this team. In June, the City Council approved an agreement with Sycamores as the provider for this care team. Sycamores is an agency that has more than 100 years of service in behavioral health care. And so we brought a 3-year agreement that is, you can see the numbers there, a little over $7 million for 3 years. This will also provide, the council's actions also provided authorization for the city manager to execute an MOU with LA County Department of Mental Health, which we are very close to signing. So, and the next slide, please. So what we've created is, and what we're excited about, is a program design that we think offers the most broad range of service capacity to help people manage crisis from life stressors and from unmet behavioral health needs, plus those acute mental health needs through what is a real hybrid approach between the City of West Hollywood and the LA County Department of Mental Health. This development process has taken us about 3 years from the late summer of 2020 when we started these conversations. And we're very excited to report that the care team officially launched in serving the community this past Labor Day. And they're in soft launch mode right now. They're training, they're having lots of conversations with our other providers, including Sheriff, Fire, and Block by Block. And so we're really grateful to all of you for making time to have those conversations with the care team. So this team is eventually will be operating 24/7, 365 in West Hollywood. It'll provide trauma-informed, culturally competent services to the community, and will operate with 2 peer support managers on each shift. Right now, there's 1 care team per shift. They bring expertise in assessing crisis situations, safety planning, welfare checks, grief and loss support, first aid, conflict mediation, and social service referrals. And the great thing about having this team in West Hollywood is that we already have such a robust portfolio of existing social services providers, so that after the immediate crisis is de-escalated, that they can help the person find an agency home to have ongoing care. And we landed on this model for staff for the care team as it mirrors the roles of the LA County Department of Mental Health acute mental health crisis evaluation teams. And while we know that every crisis situation can benefit from peer support, only some crises need the credentialed mental health clinician to assess for involuntary holds, acute treatment, and care. And this is where the care team will connect with Department of Mental Health and leverage its resources so that we can have the most acute cases treated by the county. And if we'll go to the next slide, we'll see some of the blended capacities that we have using the county resources. So this will, the 988 system gives us 24/7 crisis counselors at no cost to the city. It also provides call referral through the DMH Access Center, which is also at no cost to the city. And then because we've built this team out in close partnership with the LA County Department of Mental Health and the Alternative Crisis Response Unit there, we'll have access to more of their mobile response units, psychiatric care services, and appropriate ambulance transportation services as needed. Most callers, Dee Dee Hirsch is the operator for the 988 system. Most callers get the support that they need over the phone. But again, when in-person care and support is needed, Dee Dee Hirsch will transfer the incident to the DMH Access Center for mobile response. When the Access Center identifies that the incident is happening in West Hollywood city limits, they will follow their standard operating procedure to dispatch a DMH mobile crisis team. If their estimated time of arrival is more than 30 minutes, the incident will be simultaneously referred to the West Hollywood care team, so the city's team can rally to the location and begin providing support and stabilizing care. And if you've experienced any traffic in West Hollywood, you know that any ETA from any other part of LA County is going to be more than 30 minutes. So the care team will, in almost all situations, be the responding team. If DMH is needed for additional help, the care team will be on site and help transition with a warm handoff. If we go to the next slide, please. So this gives us kind of a big picture look at how we are integrating the care team into the city's existing kind of environment of first responders and social services providers. So as you can see, what we hope is that there will be kind of no wrong dial for people who are seeking assistance. 911 has been around for more than 50 years, so people are very familiar, and people are just learning about 988. So people can call 911, call 988, and depending on the situation and how the level of crisis involved, the care team can serve as a secondary on-scene responder with the Sheriff's Department and LA County Fire, which they have already done in their first month of operation. And they'll also be a resource for our Healthcare in Action and other teams, as well as Block by Block, when there is not necessarily a role for law enforcement or fire on scene, but when there is a need for support and resources. So the next piece that we're excited about is the care team's role in moving people again from that crisis moment to connectivity to the city's social service agencies. In addition to the conversations we're having over this last month with fire and block by block and sheriffs, the team has also been engaged in a series of briefings with the city's contracted social services providers to make sure they understand the services available at those agencies and that the agencies understand the services available from the care team. So the service portfolio is more than $7 million of social services annually. In addition to this team, they will be able to provide those referrals and get people connected to ongoing care. And if we go one more slide, I think. There we go. So as I mentioned, the care team first launched last month on Labor Day. We're phasing up to 24/7, 365 operations. We plan to have right now one team per shift. And based on community feedback and best practices from Department of Mental Health and our providers, the care team will operate in an unmarked SUV with no lights and sirens, and staff will be dressed in everyday clothing, no uniforms. This is symbolic of the desire from the community and from providers to provide warm, welcoming, and confidential services that are non-stigmatizing and non-stimulating. As we go through this implementation of this program, we'll study program outcomes, continue to work on process improvements, and focus on sustaining those strong collaborative partnerships that we've already begun, and make sure that the community is aware of the crisis resources available to them, starting with that initial call to 988 for support. And if we go to the last slide, it'll just share with you where we've compiled all of the information about the care team, including previous council reports and updates, which is at weho.org/care team. And with that, I will stop for questions, and then I'll be happy to share information about the Holloway as well.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Nickel.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Hi, Corey, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for the report. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between the MET team and the care team?
Certainly. So we're very fortunate in West Hollywood to have a really significant continuum of care for people who are in need. So the MET team is the mental health evaluation team. The city is still the only city in LA County that we're aware of that funds its own specific MET team. And so we have 40 hours a week. We have a MET team that is a DMH clinician who's paired with a specially trained deputy, and they can co-respond with sheriffs. Sometimes I think they've gone out on fire calls as well, and help de-escalate situations. That is with a specially trained deputy and a clinician, and they go out. They also go in an unmarked vehicle to provide kind of low stimulation confidential services. So we have that team 40 hours a week. The care team, again, we hope to be 24/7, 365. Both teams serve people who are housed or unhoused. And what we hope is that the care team provides another resource to the community. It does not include law enforcement. It doesn't include EMT. And they will be, again, as they're communicating and working closely with sheriff and fire, they'll use their expertise where needed, but it'll be a team that is responding without law enforcement or EMT.
So the care team does not have a dedicated deputy to respond with you.
That's right. That's correct.
How then is it decided which team to send? I just want to make certain that there aren't people being sent into dangerous situations without any backup.
Certainly. So the 911 dispatch for sheriff and fire, those dispatchers will get information, as any of you who've made calls to 911 know, they get as much information as they can. They'll make a determination. If it is a team that needs, they'll ask for MET to co-respond. MET doesn't typically respond first. They'll co-respond with the sheriff's deputies on scene. The care team will most likely, in many situations, will be a second responder when sheriff and fire have requested them to come out, or they will be dispatched through 988. And that 988 does not dispatch law enforcement unless there's somebody who's, an active suicide situation where there's means and weapons on site. And so then there would be an activation of law enforcement. But when people are calling 988 for crisis counseling, it typically wouldn't trigger a law enforcement response.
So does 988 then have the ability to ascertain if there is the need to have sheriffs involved?
Yes.
Okay, so they can do that.
Yeah, so they have specially trained crisis counselors, and they will make an assessment if an in-person response is needed and exactly what in-person response is warranted. If it's a law enforcement response, if it's an EMT response, or if it's a mental health team response.
Got it. So you can get backup if you need it.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned that the care team would be a secondary response, could be called out by the sheriff's department.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good, because there was some literature released last year, I know, from the city that referred to you as a first responder. And that's a little worrying, because the thought of just sending out people who are clinicians on their own into all sorts of situations. I've certainly been on ride-alongs. I've been on ride-alongs where people were having mental health issues, but it was still a dangerous situation.
Yes. So our goal is that, I think initially it was kind of talked about as a third first responder. And so in many cases, they will be first responding through those 988 calls. But in terms of 911 calls, they will more likely be back up to sheriff and fire as needed.
Good. Yeah, originally I believe that the idea of it being a third first responder was when money was being shifted away from the police and it was being shifted to things like these teams. But of course, in the end, just like block by block, you're going to need to go back to the police if the situation arises.
And I want to also be clear in these conversations. So as we've been developing this team, we have never advocated for any funding to be diverted from law enforcement or fire or EMT or block by block to be devoted to this team. We have advocated for funding for this team specifically, but we work in very close partnership with both sheriff and fire and block by block. And so we think, the more services and tailored services we have for the community, the better. But in the development of this team, has never been, from staff side, the recommendation to divert any funding from law enforcement for this team.
Thank you for clarifying that. Can you tell us a little bit about the type of person who would serve on the care team? What is their background, their education?
So it varies. So we have, there's a triage program manager, there's a program director, those are master level, and in one case a PhD level staff from Sycamores that are overseeing the team. On the peer support side, those can be people who may have bachelor's degrees or have commensurate experience. In some cases, they have lived experience, either of mental health experience or homelessness, or someone close to them has had that experience. And so looking at peer support, both in the mental health field as well as in the homeless field, is kind of one of the best practices in terms of making connections with community members. So it will vary depending on the level of the team member.
And how is that going, hiring for this?
Well, we have a lot of very good things to say about Sycamores, and one of them is that they have hired up very quickly. And so what we were able to do is, initially we thought we would begin with one team when we kicked off the team in September, but because of their success in hiring and recruiting for the teams, we were able to have 2 shifts covered. So we have, again, the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we've got teams there. We met with them today. They've hired 2 more on-call staff, and they are close to hiring up for the 3rd shift, which will be a weekend evening shift. And more kind of specifics on the hours for that will be forthcoming, but they have been moving in a pretty aggressive and positive way in terms of staffing.
Great. And the people being hired have specialized training as far as dealing with the LGBTQ community, yes?
Yes, so there will be, there's a series of trainings that the team members will go through if they're not already. So they will be certified CPR, first aid, Narcan distribution, and the cultural competency component of the team is also something that we're working with Sycamores on and making sure that we're hiring teams that look like West Hollywood and that they are, again, culturally competent in serving our community.
Great. Last thing is, it would make sense, I think, for us to get a monthly report just to see the kinds of calls that happen. I understand that some of the information will be sensitive because you're dealing with patients, but just how many calls and how effective it is.
So right now, because the team is just launching, we're getting initial data from them, and then we're looking at some qualitative data because we are a small city. We're not sure yet what the number of calls were going to be. We had kind of projected and anticipated that based on fire and sheriff's data, but we didn't have any way to base 988 traffic. So right now the plan is that we will receive monthly reports the first 6 months, and then we will compile all of that data and we'll begin sharing monthly reports at that time. We'll also have a community convening 6 months after launch, so we're looking at April hosting a convening of that information as well. And we will have to be somewhat careful about how we're reporting out based on confidentiality and so forth. But yes, there's a plan for reporting.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramian.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Corey. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your update today. I just have a question in regards to the care team, and I know like the Met team has a licensed clinician and a dedicated deputy that responds. Does the care team have a licensed clinician? So if need be, if a 5150 needs to be placed, a 5150 will be done then and there?
Yes, so the way the team is set up is that we have 2 peers, and they are not licensed to conduct the 5150 hold, or to write the 5150 hold. That's where the additional support from the FIT teams from LA County, when they're dispatched at the same time, that's where the licensed clinician comes into play. In addition, because we have the Met team in the city, if they need backup there and they need that clinician to write the 5150, or one of the clinicians from one of our contracted agencies who can write a hold. It's also law enforcement can write those holds as well. So they have a number of ways that if they need to get somebody on an involuntary hold quickly, they can access any of those networks to do that.
One other quick question, because you said that the care team doesn't have a designated deputy. And for example, if the crisis that's happening is on the east side, say Santa Monica and Formosa, and the Met team is on Santa Monica and San Vicente at 5 o'clock in the evening. Now that's going to take a good 40 minutes to get from the west side to the east side. And if it's a real crisis situation where there's a resident who is really in a crisis and needs a 5150, that delay, I would think, that 40-minute delay is detrimental. Is there any possibility that the care team could have a licensed clinician on standby to respond to these calls?
So they do have also, so the thing I should have mentioned is they also have a telehealth opportunity. So yes, they can get a licensed clinician to help assess right away. And the advantage of the city choosing Sycamores as the provider for this team is that Sycamores was also chosen to be the provider for the mobile crisis outreach teams for the county for our service planning area. So we're working with the same agency that's doing the MCOT teams for alternate crisis response. And so, yes, they'll have access to telehealth within the Sycamores agency, but also within the Department of Mental Health.
Thank you.
Corey, I did have a question. You said the care team, you're looking to get it staffed up 24 hours?
Yes.
Any idea when that might happen, or?
Which should happen in the next 12 months. Again, they staffed up much more quickly than we anticipated for the initial launch, so I would anticipate that they will certainly meet that goal of being 24/7 by the end of the 12-month period from their launch.
Okay, thank you. Great, because I think these programs are so vital to the city. Vice Chair Saltzman, are you good? Okay. Commission Secretary, do we have any questions in chambers?
We didn't have any questions in chambers or on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Corey, if you'd like to move forward.
Do you want the Holloway
Yes,
update?
please. Thank
Okay.
you.
I will just give you a quick update on the Holloway interim housing program. For those of you who aren't familiar, the city purchased the Holloway Motel at Holloway and Santa Monica Boulevard. The city was also received funding from the state Housing and Community Development Department from Project Home Key, and a little over $6 million for that program. And the city has committed to providing interim housing at that location for people who've been experiencing homelessness. So interim housing means people can have up to 90-day stays at that location. Getting 20 rooms at that location will double our current stock of interim housing beds for adults. So we're very excited about that. And the operator of that program will be Essentia, which is the city's current contractor for interim housing and outreach. The bid for construction went out last week. And so we're very excited to begin that process and look to have some community events, hopefully a kickoff in the first quarter of 2024. And happy to answer questions as well.
Commissioners, any questions on the Holloway project? Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair. So a lot of residents, when this was announced, had a lot of questions and concerns. This is not a homeless shelter. This is people that would stay there are people that have gone through a process and have proven that they want help, correct?
Well, it's not a shelter, it is interim housing. So people will be able to stay again for, up to 90 days. It is not a situation where they have to line up each morning for an available bed and wait to see if they can get in for that night. So once they're in, once they have completed the intake, and there is an intake process, so people should not be lining up at the site waiting for a bed. Essentia currently conducts a very similar intake process for their location in Glendale. We anticipate that they'll engage in that similar process. In addition, all of the contracted social service agencies who work with our unhoused community members will be able to make referrals to the program. And so people will have gone through either a CES assessment or other kind of gauge of interest in services and gauge of their vulnerability and if they're a right fit for the program.
Great, thank you for clarifying. And there will be security on site as well,
There'll be
correct?
security on site, there'll be staff on site 24/7. So yes, it will be.
And can you talk a little bit about any kind of the services that might be offered to the people staying there as far as to help them find housing, job placement, any kind of training that they might need?
Yes. So I think one of the key pieces is case management. And so case management and housing navigation will happen through the Essentia staff on site. Those are some of the services that they currently provide. That can be everything from, somebody doesn't have their ID or a birth certificate or a social security card. They haven't engaged with the system to get maybe benefits that they're entitled to. So they would go through that process so that they can get a lease and get into more permanent housing. There's opportunities for people to engage in recovery programming, and not all services will happen on site, but again, because we have such a robust portfolio of social services available to community members, they'll be able to avail themselves of those programs. So recovery programs, financial literacy programs, job training and readiness programs. We'll have meals on site for community members. We're also looking at some kind of trauma-informed arts programming with our arts division. So there'll be a wide variety of services available to program participants.
Great, so just to wrap it up, the residents will be vetted, there'll be security on site, and they will be helped to find permanent housing and a job if at all possible.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Saltzman.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and for all the work you're doing. I just have one question. Do you have a projection about the timing of when there are likely to be residents in the facility?
I think when we see where the construction bid comes in, I think we'll have a better sense of timing. The goal would be to complete construction by next July, and that's a very ambitious timeline. And so That's our hope and our goal, understanding that there are still some issues with supply chains and things I never knew about, like switch gear and other things that we're learning about in this process. So the hope is that we would complete construction in July, and from that point, based on the Home Key grant, there's 3 months, 90 days to get people into the facility. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Corey, thank you for the update. You know, I realized as chair that the last time when you were in, it was a completely different commission. So it's nice that our current commission gets an update on the project. I'm just curious, you say you're looking at 90 days for each individual to stay?
Up to 90 days.
Up to 90 days. What happens at the end of that period if they have not found a permanent housing facility or other arrangements have been made?
So far, we've had good success with Essentia in kind of operating within that timeline. Now, occasionally, a unit that is associated with a voucher has an inspection process that it has to go through, and sometimes in COVID, and as we've come out of COVID a bit, those inspections have been somewhat delayed. So if somebody's like on the verge and they're waiting for the inspection to be completed, they're not going to be exited from the program and put back on the street. People who aren't working at the same time, people who aren't working toward their housing goals and working with their case manager in the first 30, 60 days can be exited from the program for non-compliance and not working toward their goals. The goal is absolutely we want to get people off the street into housing and into safe environments. So the team at Essentia, I think, as the provider, they will run their program, but we haven't really had issues where people have had much extended stays. Even during COVID, they were successful in getting people into permanent housing. And so we anticipate that will be the same.
And I don't know if you remember when you were in last, I mentioned a very successful project that I was part of with AIDS Project Los Angeles, which was a buddy program. And you know, in the beginning when this project was announced, there was a lot of concern from residents, especially in the area. So I thought maybe if residents had the opportunity to get involved, it gives them more of an opportunity to know what services are provided and to maybe develop a relationship with an individual that's there. Have you put any thoughts into my great idea? I'm just curious.
So part of what will happen on site is that Essentia is going to be the program operator. And so there's, we're very involved at this point, and I think at some point we will have to restrain ourselves from our desire to be in it more than we probably should be. But they have a successful program in terms of community engagement at the location in Glendale. And they have many organizations and individuals that volunteer and participate in their programming there. The site's a little smaller here, and so some of the opportunities, like they have a guest chef program and other things at that location that we won't have room for. There's not going to be a commercial kitchen at this location, but I anticipate that Essentia will continue to do the same type of work, engaging community members and getting them involved with the program.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Rainier?
Just one quick question. In regards to the program participants who will be participating at the Holloway Housing, is it going to be a 21 and over program? And will we be allowing participants who have children, like husband, wives who have children, to also partake in the Holloway Housing program?
So the short answer to that is no. This isn't set up for families, so Essentia has some capacity at the Glendale location, limited capacity for families, but they would also make referrals to LA Family Housing and other programs. This is really 18 and older, not unaccompanied minors, not families.
Commission Secretary, do we have any comments in chambers from the public?
Doesn't look like we have any public comments.
Okay, and the same on Zoom?
Same with Zoom, no comments.
Great. Corey, anything else? Thank you. We look forward to a tour. Hopefully we'll get one. Item 9, updates from staff. Director Rivas, you are on.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the Public Safety Commission. I just want to thank Corey from Human Services and Richard Garland. I know he's left in engineering, but for their updates, as well as all our public safety partners. It's great to be back. I know I wasn't here last month's meeting, but you certainly were in good hands with our Neighborhood and Business Safety Manager, Vito Adamitis, who provided some updates to the Commission. I did want to just focus a little bit on Halloween Carnival as the event is returning back to pre-pandemic levels, so to speak, from a street closure perspective. And so similar to what we've seen during this year during Pride, we will have Santa Monica Boulevard closed from Doheny to La Cienega. There will be some additional impacts, traffic-related impacts, just east of La Cienega on Santa Monica Boulevard to Holloway. So there will be some diversion there as well to ensure pedestrian safety. But I just want to highlight for members of the community, for businesses, et cetera, we've been doing a number of outreach sessions with our event services team that takes the lead in terms of looking at the programming and the street closures, et cetera, but obviously works with our public safety and community safety department and public safety partners to ensure a safe event. So with these street closures, we certainly will be increasing the level of resources that we have for our West Hollywood Sheriff Station deputies. We also enlist a bureau, our Emergency Operations Bureau, which is a part of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And so this specific unit, this is what they do. This is their area of expertise throughout the Los Angeles County area in terms of providing additional resources, providing guidance, and ensuring that an event such as this is conducted in a safe manner. So we'll have a number of different teams specialized that will be here present, no different than what we experienced during Pride. In addition to that, we'll also have an increased level of presence from our Los Angeles County Fire Department. I know Chief Smith is not here and left, but he did touch on that and mention, right, in terms of just the alert and the folks that will be on hand both at our Fire Station 7 and Fire Station 8. But in addition to that, there will be additional resources, emergency management services, so our ambulance services, et cetera. There'll be additional resources that are provided as well. There'll be a medical tent, no differently than we had during Pride, and in years past as well, again, with additional resources from that contracted perspective that the city always provides during its major events. In addition to that, we will also have our security ambassador program increase their level of resources towards more of the evening hours, which is when we expect, of course, for folks to come out and visit our community. The street closures will begin to be impacted as early as 10 a.m. And then will be in full effect by 12 noon the day of Halloween. So that is something to just make mention to the community that, you know, you'll begin starting to see that infrastructure, our traffic control contractor that's placing out, right, the cones, the signs, and everything else that goes into shutting down a street, especially given the stretch that street closure will have. And so that will begin, as I mentioned, as early as 10 a.m. A little bit earlier, though, prior to that street closure that will occur during the daytime, we will have a street closure here on San Vicente between Melrose and Santa Monica Boulevard, and that street closure will occur at 12 a.m. on Halloween Day. And so that segment will be impacted, and then the rest of Santa Monica Boulevard, as I mentioned, will begin in terms of their closures as early as 10 a.m. and then be in full effect effect, meaning that the road will be completely shut down in both directions. East and westbound lanes will be shut down by 12 p.m. And then that is when you'll start having the building and some of the programming elements. Unlike years past, we won't have the number of stages that we've had, but we certainly will have a stage here on San Vicente and Santa Monica Boulevard that will be built. There will be a DJ, and there'll be other amenities such as decorations that are going to be placed out along Santa Monica Boulevard. You'll also have some designated areas for vending, food trucks, and food that will be provided. And right now, currently, which is pending, it has not yet been approved, but it is in the works and more than likely going to occur. That's something that we haven't done before and will be the first time ever, is we are working with our West Hollywood cannabis businesses in terms of activating on Santa Monica Boulevard, having a private event that they are producing, and that is more than likely what will take place between Lapeer and Robertson on the south side of Santa Monica Boulevard, so in the eastbound lanes, and taking that segment there for a cannabis special event activation. And so there's definitely more information that will be provided in totality in terms of the street closures, in terms of the programming, as well as any sort of activations. Outside of those activations and activities that occur within the street closures themselves, the city has certainly been advocating to all of the businesses in terms of filing for what's called a special event permit. And so a special event permit essentially allows a business to activate beyond what they're normally permitted to do. So for example, if you have, let's say, a retail space that wants to have a DJ and maybe a costume contest or party of some sort, and have some level of creativity, decorations, etc., that's obviously not something that they normally do, then they would just simply need to file a special event permit with the city's Neighborhood and Business Safety Division, and then that'll go through that review process. One of the things that our city council did as a part of this is that they did waive the special event permit fees, as well as any sort of encroachment fees. And so that means that a business obviously would just have to file, submit their application, and all of that review process, et cetera, would not be charged to them, which is typically what is recovered when we're charging a fee for a permit review, et cetera. So businesses, as I mentioned, have been communicated this, was on a call earlier today with a number of different city divisions and departments, as well as our business community members, and then just last Friday as well attended a West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce call where we also provided that information. And so we've been pushing it out. We always say there's no penalty for early submittal, so we make sure that the businesses are aware that they get their applications in, because as you can imagine, there's certainly a more elevated volume of applications that staff receives, most of which do get processed timely and get approved, but of course there's a lot of back and forth that's involved with that, and so sometimes it's always best for folks to just get their applications in as early as possible, because there may be impacts and questions and additional information that they're unaware of that will be requested at that time. In addition to that, we will have our code enforcement staff. So Vito Adamitis, our Neighborhood and Business Safety Manager, who was here last month, maybe touched on it or not, but we'll have all of our code enforcement field staff that will also be working that evening, and they're going to be responsible for looking at all of our business establishments, ensuring that the occupancy levels are being maintained, that security is being maintained, also looking at any of the walkways as a result of the temporary outdoor dining areas that we have in the area. So making sure that those, the integrity of those walkways is being maintained as well, especially with all the traffic. So if there's any sort of issues that they observe, that they can identify that, right, and address it. They'll also be dealing with a lot of the illegal street vending that tends to occur with the major events. And so that is a difficult task to address. address, because if we've all experienced that, you can certainly see anywhere from 75 to 100 different types of street vendors that end up coming out, most of which are not allowed to be vending, and so our code enforcement staff deals with that as well. And then they also are responding along with West Hollywood Sheriff Station deputies outside of the street closure. Towards the later part of the evening hours, we tend to get a number of calls for service regarding loud noise. It could be loud parties in the residential areas, and so our code enforcement staff partners with our West Hollywood Sheriff's deputies as well to address those types of issues as well. And so that is more or less kind of the update as it relates to Halloween. And I just want to pause first before I mention one other additional update to allow the commission to ask any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff? I have a question. The electronic signage that's placed throughout the city, I don't know the technical name that designates which arteries will be closed and at what time. Since we seem to have an issue with pickpocketing and incidents of such, and having a large influx of individuals walking on the streets, a lot of mobile targets, is there any way to embed any public safety language on those machines that just suggests that people be more vigilant and more aware?
It is kind of limited because you're only allowed so many lines and the frequency, right, when you see kind of that flash, right? And I can't remember, I don't have the specs like in front of me in terms of, how long it stays up, right, and the frequency. So it can be done, but the intent is as you're messaging, you want to be able, as somebody is driving in, to be able to capture kind of the 2 or 3 screens, right, that come in. So when you start adding and prolonging it, it could impact that, but it's definitely something, Chair, that we can look into to see if there's any sort of possibility for us to kind of incorporate that. I know we typically have them place the changeable message boards, CMS boards. We typically have them placed strategically in certain locations that obviously will impact as drivers are coming into the city, right, of where they're going to obviously get stuck in traffic. So, but we can certainly look at that. But I think even as Commissioner Adam had mentioned earlier about the pickpocketing, I think working with our businesses specifically, especially in the Rainbow District, it's going to be so important to be vigilant, I think, to make announcements. And I know many of the businesses already do. They put up posters. They even have kind of changeable electronic signage in the restrooms and in certain other areas, I think would be very helpful. And I know even some venues even have their security staff at the door that are informing folks, right, as they're coming in, hey, listen, be vigilant, make sure that you have your, your belongings as close to you as possible, and that you're on the lookout. But there are just, thousands of people that obviously we're expecting no differently than we've seen during Pride, and even more so is what we're expecting during Halloween. If the years past have been any indicators, we're expecting, right, tens of thousands, maybe even up to over 100,000 folks that are going to be coming to the city. So I think messaging is going to be so important. One of the things that we do plan on doing leading up to Halloween, we did just have a business public safety meeting in August, but I think it's going to be very prudent for us to reach out to our business community, have a virtual meeting, and just kind of do a quick check-in with our West Hollywood Sheriff Station and our community safety department here at the city to just re-emphasize that. So it's definitely something that we plan on doing, but we'll definitely look into that.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Commission Secretary, any questions from chambers?
Doesn't look like we have any public comments.
Okay. Director Rivas, if you'd like to proceed.
Yes, and so the final update that I just wanted to provide the commission and to the members of the community is that the city is going to be offering a free American Red Cross CPR first aid and AED certification training. That is scheduled to occur on Saturday, November 4th. There is information that's already placed on the City of West Hollywood's calendar. I do know that there will be a press release issued soon, or did it go out already? And I'm looking at Jessica. It's soon, right? Soon. So I just wanted to make sure, because I know I did see kind of a draft of it. So there will be a press release issued that will be sent out by the city. They'll be inviting community members. This training does fill up pretty quickly. And I believe Chair had gone through maybe a part of it, but it is a kind of a two-part where you are provided information as part of the first part that's online that you can do from the comfort of your home at your convenience. It's about a 2-hour online informational training, and then you print out right whatever demonstrates that you've completed that training when you've completed it, and then you bring it in. And the second part of that is actually the hands-on training. And that's something that our Community Safety Department has partnered with our Recreation Division here at the city on. And so taking advantage of our great lifeguards and our aquatics staff that are certified trainers in terms of providing this and enlisting their assistance, and they've been grateful enough. So this is the second offering that we've done. We plan on doing this at least once a year. It was well attended last year, and again, just additional information once we push that out, through the press release, place it on the city's calendar, and have all that information for community members. So we'll be sending that out to all the commissions and just inviting community members as well. I know there have been a couple of outlets already that have already pushed that out, and so if folks do want to register, there's information through our Recreation Division aquatics team there for folks to be able to register and reserve a spot. So with that, Chair, I'm done with my updates for this evening.
Great. Vice Chair Saltzman, I believe you had a question.
Yes, I have a question about a separate issue. If I don't want to go in front of others if they want to ask about the things Director Rivas already spoke about.
Any comments about? No?
Okay. Director Rivas, I'm just wondering if you could give a brief update for the Commission on the status of the public safety technology proposals that were discussed in the August joint session with the Council.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of the next steps involved for the public safety items. So we did have the special meeting for members of the community that are unaware in August that included both our Public Safety Commission and our City Council. And so one of the items that Commissioner Saltzman is mentioning, or excuse me, Vice Chair Saltzman is mentioning, is related to public safety technology. And so included in that item, we had 12 different options for consideration for the City Council to consider. And based off of the direction that staff received at that time, the plan is to return at a later date, but that date in terms of what staff is planning to do tentatively is scheduled for December. And so we typically provide our semi-annual public safety update to the City Council. And so we're planned to do that in December. I don't know whether or not it's going to be the first or second meeting in December. That's yet to be determined, but it will definitely go in December. And so we plan on returning. There was a lot of input and feedback from the public, a lot of input and feedback from the commission, as well as the City Council that came out of that special meeting in August. And so what we are going to be doing is obviously providing additional information on those items that were brought forth and discussed, and then returning in December for the City Council to further consider moving forward with certain items or not.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Thank you, Director Rivas. Item 10 is public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have any comments?
We don't have any public comments.
Okay, thank you. Then item 11, comments and items from commissioners. Commissioners. Vice Chair Saltzman.
Yes, I'd like to follow up on the the report Director Rivas just made about the 12 public safety technology proposals. And as I understand his report, those proposals will go back from staff to the City Council in December, but will not come back to our commission. And I just wanted to suggest that since I think our commission has some expertise that might be helpful to the council, that we ask the staff to put on our agenda for discussion in our November meeting those 12 safety technology proposals, so that if we have opinions or views or knowledge about them, we can offer those, and then the staff, when it reports to the council for the December meeting, could include that information in a memorandum to the council. And if that is something that is attractive to our commission members, I have a motion which I'll make, which is I move the commission instruct the staff to include the public safety technology proposals as a discussion item on our November meeting agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So then will we be able to see that on our agenda in November, Director Rivas?
Do we see a consensus with the rest of the commission and chair?
I'm in agreement. Commissioner Ramian?
I agree as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll definitely place it as a debrief of the special meeting that occurred in August. Certainly don't see a problem with that. And actually the timing, even though it'll be a little bit tight, I think we're going to be just perfectly fine in terms of applying the same staff report. Staff will not be planning on providing a presentation, so I just want to be upfront with that with the commission. But obviously it'll be the same staff report, and then we'll hear from each of the commissioners in terms of any additional input and feedback. Even if it's the same that we heard in August, I think it'll be helpful to have that discussion. And then to Vice Chair Saltzman's point, we can definitely consolidate all of that information and then send that to the City Council when the item returns before them in December.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Any other comments?
Yes. Director Reeves, I have a question. How long does it take once the commission approves something to be agendized to come in front of the commission? I believe it was like in July we were having discussions about restaurants, bars being able to communicate with each other, and I believe I had mentioned patron scan. How long does it take for something like that to get agendized to come in front of the commission, so we can maybe invite someone from patron scan to give the commission a little description about what they offer?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on the work plan and the workload, right, that the staff have and in reaching out. But we can certainly look into, I guess I would refer to it more as like a patron check-in system. I don't know if I would want to get into a specific vendor in terms of that, but I know there are a number of them. I do know that that discussion did occur as a part of the nightlife special study session that occurred several months. I believe that was earlier this year, and I could be wrong. Maybe it was last year, but that did occur also between a number of different advisory boards and commissions. Typically speaking, though, to answer your question, if there's something that is asked from a commissioner, there's consensus, right? It passes. If there are concerns with the timing, I know Vice Chair just requested kind of the public safety technology item. I know that's a timely item, and so understanding that, knowing that that's going to return back to the City Council for discussion because there's direction that staff received from the City Council to return, then that's certainly something that we would prioritize and work into. But if there's a timing concern, then staff will certainly bring that to the commission's attention. So you can always request, hey, do you think it's doable if we can maybe have this agendized in the next 2 meetings or 3 meetings, or the next meeting, right? And if there's concerns, we can certainly talk through that. But I'll make sure to look at the agenda. I know if we're going to be placing the public safety technology item on the agenda in November, we probably want to keep that agenda light, so to speak. We do have an item that will be brought before the commission, and I should mention that actually during my updates, and so I'm just remembering that from our planning, long-range planning division, and so you will have Vision Zero. I believe the chair was involved in maybe providing some input and feedback in the past, and so that item is slated to come before the commission in November, but we could add the public safety technology item. So maybe it's December. We can look at December in terms of maybe adding that to the agenda.
Thank you. And I also just want to, part of my public comments, I took a Narcan training last week. It was very informative, and it was a 30-minute, 40-minute training session, outlining, being able to identify if someone is having an overdose, what to do if there's an overdose, how to administer Narcan. So that was very informative, and unfortunately, with all the overdoses going on in our community, I think it's very important that everyone does somewhat familiarize themselves with Narcan, how to administer Narcan, identify the signs of someone overdosing to be able to save a life. So I feel that was very important. If any of my fellow commissioners want information on the training, I'll be more than happy to share that with them on who to reach out to for that training. And the last thing I want to do is the community academy that the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department has been putting on has been phenomenal. I believe there's 2 or 3 more sessions left. It's going to be sad when it's over. It's been very informative. I want to thank the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department for putting on a great program, a great educational program for the community to come and learn about the different departments of the Sheriff's Department, from the K-9 team to the SWAT team to the MET team to everything that our deputies and law enforcement officers have to face on a daily basis. So I highly encourage the community who has not taken it this time around to look out for it when they offer it next, and definitely sign up for it. It's very educational. Thank you.
I also, in agreement with Commissioner Ramian, attending the Sheriff's Academy. Thank you to our Sheriff's Department. They put a lot of great work and effort into providing this program for us. It has been very informative, and watching the K-9 team work last week was a great opportunity. I know there's a field trip this week that several of us won't make, but we'll get a special trip. But with community members, I believe there's talk of maybe doing this twice a year. I highly encourage anyone in the community to please, consider this program, because it's just great to have a better understanding of how things work with our Sheriff's Department. Commissioners, any other comments?
Same thing. The Community Police Academy is amazing. The speakers that have come before us, including the Deputy DA Hatami, everyone's been really, really great. And so I encourage everyone to do it as well. I also just wanted to mention that I always try to speak to residents just about issues going on in their little part of West Hollywood. And I know that there's some stuff on Hayworth that's been happening that I think could benefit from having an active neighborhood watch group there. So I started my own neighborhood watch group. That's how I got started years ago. I'm an advocate of neighborhood watch groups. I know that there was one years ago. This will be around Hayworth and Norton. It is inactive now. If anyone wants to be a block captain, wants to step up, wants to form one, they should reach out to staff. It sounds daunting. It sounds sort of scary. Neighborhood watch, like you're going to be out patrolling. It's not like that. It's actually really, really useful. You have direct contact with the city. Ms. Plank, Corey Plank, who was just here when I started my group 7 years ago, she came and sat in my front yard along with the sheriff, staff, and just talk to the people on my street. So it can really make a difference, not just for Hayworth, but anywhere there's not an active neighborhood watch group. Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional comments? Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are adjourned until our next meeting on Monday, November 13th, here in Chambers at 6 p.m. Have a great Halloween.